question is the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Rankin.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this private member's motion about trade moved by the member for Bass. I'm a big supporter of freer trade, and Labor has a proud history when it comes to trade liberalisation. All three of Australia's largest trade barrier cuts in 73, 88 and 91 were made under Labor governments. In 1973, Whitlam cut tariffs by 25%. In 1988 and 1991, the big tariff cuts under Hawke and Keating are estimated to have put $4,000 into the pockets of average households. And then under Prime Ministers Rudd and Gillard, we had the Asian Century White Paper, free trade agreements with Chile, Malaysia, ASEAN and New Zealand. We're supportive of trade liberalisation where it boosts growth, creates jobs, forges competitive industries, gives consumers greater choice and lower prices. The best agreements, Deputy Speaker, are multilateral, whereas bilateral or regional agreements are second best, but ideally a stepping stone to something more inclusive. I agree with Senator Wong, the Shadow Minister for Trade, who said we need our trade policy to be outward-facing and not inward-looking. Japan, as other members have noted, is already Australia's second largest agricultural export market. And we've got these agreements with Japan and Korea signed in the last little while. We haven't opposed those trade deals signed in the last 18 months, but we have raised some concern with parts of the agreements. A lot of the work was done by Labor ministers, including Simon Crean and Richard Marles, and also my predecessor, the great Craig Emerson, and they did some very important work on the Japanese and Korean agreements. The great Craig Emerson. I'll take that interjection. He's a wonderful man, Craig Emerson. As I said, and as other speakers have said, Deputy Speaker, Japan is already Australia's second largest agricultural export market, worth about $4 billion last year, also our second biggest market for non-agricultural goods, something like $42 billion in 2013. And Korea is our third largest export market and our fourth largest trading partner, with two-way trade valued at $30.5 billion last financial year. On this side of the House, our concerns with the Japan agreement, where it didn't go far enough on sugar, and with the Korean agreement because it had that ISDS investor-state clause that Labor wouldn't have agreed to in government. But our support for the two agreements, Korea and Japan, goes to our support of free trade deals that are, on balance, good for Australian consumers and businesses. And Labor will take the same approach when it comes to the China agreement and other deals on the horizon. We're expecting the full details of the China deal to be released this week. It should have been released already. We know it's been finished for some time. And when we do come to examine it, Labor will determine on balance if it's in Australia's interests. We do hold concerns about key agricultural goods being left out. It will have an ISDS provision, and we are concerned, as other speakers have said, about the likely labour market arrangements as well. But we also recognise this is a historic opportunity to expand Australia's trade with China, something both sides of the House are interested in. The National Australia Bank, for example, says that the agreement offers considerable potential for Australian agricultural and services firms and will level the playing field with other countries who already have an FTA with China. So when we consider the China deal in detail, we'll factor in these advantages for Australian producers and consumers. Deputy Speaker, we also saw the Trans-Pacific Partnership make the news this weekend as the US Congress voted down the President's Trade Promotion Authority, as the member for Perth mentioned in her contribution. 2 weeks ago, I participated in a forum hosted by the member for Canberra with the member for Perth, and a whole 100 or more locals interested in the TPP. And it was great to see the community so keen to understand the complex issues at play in that partnership. Labor does have some real concerns about what we know about the partnership so far, especially when it comes to copyright restrictions, pharmaceuticals and investor-state settlement mechanisms. We do need a full and proper discussion of the merits of any agreement so that we can come to an on-balance assessment of the deal and decide whether it's in Australia's national interest. That's why the government should undertake some real economic modelling of the deal. We know from our briefings that this has not been carried out. So we do call on the Minister for Trade to undertake detailed economic modelling of the TPP so we can get a better understanding of its merits. Trade is attracting a great deal of interest, Deputy Speaker, not just in this parliament but around the community. That's a good thing if it helps us reach a considered position consistent with our beliefs and beneficial for our economy. We're supportive of some of the work done to reach agreements over the last 18 months, but we need to assure that the China agreement and the TPP and all trade agreements on the horizon are in the national interest. If they are, and if they're good for jobs and consumers, we'll support them.
The member's time.